This is Sierra. This is Sierra's friend Liz. Sierra and Liz are the bestest of friends. But one day, Sierra got very mad at Liz. Sierra was so mad she decided to steal her dad's gun out of his safe. In her fit of anger, Sierra brought her dad's gun to school. Sierra found Liz at school and pointed the gun directly at her. Sierra then grabbed Liz by the arm and dragged her all the way outside. Once outside, Sierra locked Liz in the back of her car and drove 90 miles per hour in circles. While driving, Sierra told Liz that her mom and dad died in a house fire that morning. While driving, Sierra spilt bleach on the seat of her uncle's car. Sierra took his car without his permission. While at school, Liz's brother Tom overheard what Sierra had said to Liz about their parents. Sierra wanted to scare Liz by stopping the car really fast, but when she stopped, Liz hit her head against the window. Once Sierra let Liz out of the car, Liz spent the next 4 days vomiting because she has severe vertigo that was exacerbated by Sierra's horrible driving. Liz suffered a concussion from hitting her head. Her and her brother also both left the state after hearing about their parents. Liz is now afraid to get in cars because of how bad the vomiting was after the ride. Sierra then threw the gun in a lake, and they were never able to recover it. Liz then sued Sierra for assault, battery, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Her father sued her for conversion, and her uncle sued her for trespass to chattels. The elements of assault are an act, intent to cause apprehension of imminent harmful or offensive contact, apprehensive of imminent or harmful offensive contact, and causation of the apprehension. In Sierra's case, she assaulted Liz by the act of holding the gun up to Liz's face. Her intent was to scare Liz by holding the gun to her face. There was apprehension because Liz was aware of the imminent harmful or offensive contact, which would be the gun shooting at her. And the causation would be, but for Sierra holding the gun to Liz's face, there would not have been an assault between Sierra and Liz. The elements of battery are an act, intent to cause imminent contact with the plaintiff's person, contact that is harmful or offensive, and causation of the harmful or offensive contact. Between Liz and Sierra, Sierra battered Liz when she grabbed her by the arm. She acted by grabbing her by the arm. She intended to grab Liz by the arm. Her grabbing Liz and dragging her out of the school was contact that was harmful or offensive. And but for Sierra grabbing Liz by the arm and dragging her out, there would not have been harmful or offensive contact and not have been a battery. The elements of conversion are personal property, aka a chattel. The plaintiff is in possession of or entitled to the immediate possession of the chattel. Intent to exercise dominion, or serious interference, and causation of the serious interference. In this case, the conversion is between Sierra and her father. The personal property is Sierra's father's gun. Sierra's father, the plaintiff, is in possession or entitled to immediate possession of the gun. Sierra intends to steal the gun, which is dominion. She does dominion or steal the gun. And the causation of the serious interference is, but for Sierra stealing the gun, there would not have been conversion between Sierra and her father. The elements of false imprisonment are an act that completely confines the plaintiff within fixed boundaries set by the defendant, intent to confine the plaintiff or a third party, causation of the confinement, and the plaintiff was either conscious or suffered actual harm from the confinement. In this case, the act that completely confined the plaintiff was when Sierra locked Liz in the backseat of the car. She intended to lock Liz in the backseat of the car, and but for Sierra locking Liz in the backseat of the car, there would not have been false imprisonment. Sierra was also conscious and aware of the fact that she was locked in the backseat of the car, unable to get out because the car was going 90 miles per hour. The elements of intentional infliction of emotional distress are an act of extreme or outrageous conduct, intent to cause severe emotional distress is suffered, and the defendant is the cause of the emotional distress. In this case, the act of extreme or outrageous conduct is when Sierra tells Liz that her parents were killed in a house fire. Sierra intended to cause severe emotional distress by telling Liz that her parents were in a house fire. Liz did suffer severe emotional distress, and she moved out of state, and Sierra was the cause of this emotional distress. But for Sierra telling Liz that her parents had died, Liz would not have suffered emotional distress. The elements to trespass to chattels are personal property, aka a chattel. The plaintiff is in possession of the chattel or is entitled to immediate possession. Intent to dispossess or intermeddle, dispossession or intermeddling, and the causation of the dispossession or intermeddling. In this case, the personal property is Sierra's uncle's car. Her uncle is in possession of or entitled to immediate possession of his car. Sierra intends to dispossess or intermeddle when she takes his car without her permission. The dispossession or the intermeddling is when the bleach spills on the seat of the car, and but for Sierra taking the car, there would not have been trespass the chattels. Transferred intent when talking about a tort is when the defendant may be liable for certain torts even if the defendant intended a different tort. In this case, transferred intent of a tort is when Sierra intends to just scare Liz by slamming on the brakes of her car, but instead, Liz hits her head on the window of the car. This becomes a battery, when originally Sierra just intended to assault Liz. Transferred intent when talking about a plaintiff is when the defendant may be liable for certain torts even if the defendant intended the tort against a different plaintiff. In this case, Sierra is liable for emotional distress against Tom, Liz's brother, because Tom heard about the rumor that Sierra had spread about Liz's parents. This created emotional distress in Tom and caused him to move away. And even though Sierra intended to cause emotional distress on Liz, it also caused emotional distress on Tom, which means she is liable for intentional infliction of emotional distress on Tom. The thin skull rule is when the defendant is liable for damages even if the extent of the harm is unforeseeable. In this case, the thin skull rule applies to when Liz gets sick for 4 days after Sierra driving around because of vertigo that was exacerbated by the driving. Even though Sierra did not know that Liz could get sick, any damages caused by Liz being sick for 4 days are Sierra's fault because of the thin skull rule. She is liable for any damages even though she did not know that Liz had a prior condition.